I've always feared going to hell as a child.
Thank you, Najrin. Um, Thank you for such a beautiful work that speaks at so many levels, that takes the little moments to raise much, much larger questions. But before I get carried away and start having a conversation with you, without any delay, let me call you and Sabika, on. And hi, Sabika, welcome. Hi, Nazreen, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, we need to unspotlight me and put these women in the spotlight so that I can vanish. Yeah.
I think I will take like 30 seconds for Nazrin to read the kind of amazing comments that are coming up. Thank you for the most beautiful performance. It was very striking, so simple yet so heart-wrenching. And for someone like me, who has, if not the same but similar identity, it really is very relatable. I mean, I was actually thinking that, oh my God, these are exactly my inner thoughts. This is exactly what I feel. This is exactly, how I or many like us have faced discrimination while finding our house, and this everyday struggle, the multiplicity of struggle that we've to face as Muslim women within and outside. So thank you so much. Thank you. And not just me, but I think everyone in the comment section is saying this, that the vulnerability and the poetry of the performance is heartbreaking. It's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words.
So I think the first question before we move ahead would be, about the form, about how, and even before we go into the question, just wanted to talk about how politically relevant this piece is at the moment, that how, when we are given an opportunity to express ourselves as performers, as artists, we can no longer write about things like the beauty of the flowers, perform the love song anymore, because it's no longer a choice, but the necessity. It's we have no other choice but to talk about our vulnerabilities with every tool that we get, with every opportunity that we get. And it is so politically relevant, especially for Muslim women who are always seen either as a fetish or as someone who is exotic, or there are people who are ready to be our messiahs all the time. So the struggle of Muslim women in the present day context in India, the political, social context in India is very unique, and it is full of multiple marginalities, multiple vulnerabilities, which I think neither does the political system ever understand. In fact, uses it to further their own agenda and marginalize us even further. Nor does our own community sometimes gets it, like the whole churn of it. So thank you for bringing that conversation forward. Thank you for opening that conversation so that we can really talk about this. I think my first question would be about form as a performer. This form of the monologue performance that is actually put into a film, that is actually put together in a movie. Please tell us more about it. How did you come up with it? What went into putting this together? What went into visualizing it in such a striking and brilliant way? Especially the location. Where did you shoot this, and also why?
Yeah, right. Thanks for the question, Sabika. I'm going to try and answer the question about the form and the relevance of the piece together. So, I don't remember what the genesis of the piece was. I knew that there was a seismic shift that was taking place around me. And I don't really remember how it all started, but I knew something had changed. I was in JNU for 2 years. So obviously, I was, you know, witnessing a lot on campus. This was around 2016-17. And then even post that, I was in Delhi for a few years, and all my experiences kind of pointed to a huge change that was kind of overpowering the entire city, and by extension the country. And I remember being quite taken aback by having a conversation at the dinner table with my parents about whether we have our documents in place when the CAA was implemented. And I didn't think that there would be a day where I would be sitting and having this conversation with my parents. And that's when it hit me. Things had changed drastically. Um, the kind of privilege you hold, say, with your class, I mean, is not going to cushion you anymore. It's basically coming for the entire Muslim population, and by extension, other vulnerable bodies as well. So that was that kind of struck me and a lot of my friends quite hard, and I started thinking about this more and more when the pandemic began. And we were all cooped up in our homes, and we had a lot of time to ourselves, spending more time than usual in our own respective spaces. And that's when these thoughts started brewing. And the location of this brewing was my room, my childhood bedroom in Kolkata. I had shifted back to Kolkata from Delhi during the pandemic. And this is the room where I had journals from childhood, where I had penned down my fears, nightmares, little microaggressions that I would face, which I can call microaggressions now, with the privilege of the fact that I have a vocabulary to label these feelings with, or these incidents with. And so I started going through all this material because I always have had a habit of documenting my life in words. And that's when these thoughts started brewing, and I started writing the script. It didn't start as a script, it started as a journal. And it started as a journal of feelings, how I was feeling on an everyday basis with all the events that were unfolding around me, and how I felt about all the microaggressions and other kinds of aggressions that I had faced owing to my Muslim identity in Delhi and in Kolkata in the past. Um, and I think that's how slowly I realized that there was some potential in this text, that some potential for a script in this text. And that's when I started kind of pruning it down and seeing if there was a possibility I could turn this into a script, because I've always been inclined towards performance and wanted to convert it into a form that spoke with more precarity. And so I decided, when I turned it into a script, I decided, like, if it were to be converted to a performance, it would have to be in my bedroom, because this is where all the thoughts have brewed. This is where all the thoughts are located. This is where the text is located. And this room has acted as both a refuge during vulnerable times throughout my adolescence. And this has also been a space that I've wanted to break out of desperately at one point, because I felt it was suffocating me. I felt like I had to move to a bigger vessel. So this room has been a site of many negotiations and emotional compunctions. And that's when I realized that if it were to be converted into a performance, it would have to be this room. And of course, the pandemic had fundamentally shifted, had fundamentally changed the way performance was being presented to audiences, which essentially which obviously has which obviously precluded the possibility of liveness. And so live performance was not an option. So my friend and videographer Annette, she kind of stepped in She's a wonderful videographer, and I really felt that her visual language would be so strongly suited to my content. And she came on board. She came over to Calcutta. We spent an entire week shooting the entire shooting the text. I mean, converting the text into a performance in this room. We had converted it into a studio space, basically. Yeah, I think this is why I had chosen this room as a location for my performance, because I don't think I would be comfortable staging this text in any other space. Of course, if it was a live performance, it would be a different conversation altogether. But if it I mean, if it had to be as permanent a medium as video, then it had to be this room particularly. And even while making the video, we had a lot of questions between ourselves. Annette and I were constantly talking about how to merge the language of theater with film, because we didn't want this to be a short film. But then, of course, there's film grammar in the way, there are these visual interjections. So, I mean, the visual interjections were planned as such because I wanted to foreground the permeable quality of memories, the log and several other instances. And I wanted them to float across registers, and that's why we included those visual flights. But we also didn't want those visual flights to be seamless. So there were all these like little negotiations that had to be made, and we still honestly don't know how to label this format. Like, we don't know if this is an entirely if this is a short film entirely, or if this is a theater piece. It's either somewhere in between or not within the framework of theater and film at all. It's something that we have experimented with. It was suited to the text that I had worked on. It was suited to all the discussions that Annette and I had. And that's why we shot the film the way we did. And of course, like, even while making the film, of course, it's partially based on my experiences and lived realities, but I've also drawn from experiences of friends and acquaintances who have undergone similar experiences, because these experiences are never exclusive. And it's sad that so many people can relate to this, because it tells you that these experiences are they happen all the time. They have been happening through the ages, and they are not exclusive to me, basically. When I screened this video to my parents a few days, I mean, a few days ago, my in the 80s, and he had the exact same experiences to recount. And now, of course, his social position, it's very different. His gender privileges him in certain aspects, but keeping that aside, these experiences have remained the same for people looking to take up spaces in the city. And that's what bothered me the most, which is when I was able to verbalize to myself what was happening around me, which is that as a community, we are threatened against taking up space. And that's why, like, in the contemporary moment, this threat, because it has been validated by the incumbent government, it is a pulsating, intimate threat of annihilation, of total erasure. You are told that you cannot take up space in this country. You are told you are not, that your presence is invalid. And that's why I think, and that's why obviously NRC and CAA also come in, right? Like, they invalidate you on using the construct of citizenship. And that's why queer bodies, or trans women, or Muslim women, men and women, I mean, vulnerable bodies, basically, who do not fit into heteronormative family structures, they are the ones who would bear the brunt of this act the most. And when the bill became an act, that is where my problem was, and that is where that is when a lot of protests also erupted, for the right reasons. That, like, an entire community is being targeted, and that threat is being validated by a government in power. And of course, it's difficult to speak up against these things, because once you take a name, you are stamped, you are marked, and everything you produce after that is somehow boxed and directed in a certain way, and it's difficult to make content henceforth. But essentially, I think I produced this work primarily because not because I wanted to make a statement on the precarities that Muslim women experience, but because I was experiencing the precarity myself, and I wanted to let it out of my system, and it just so happens to resonate with a lot of people out there. And I think in hindsight, um, I also feel that it, I mean, hopefully it works against the representation of Muslim women in mainstream media, where, you know, Muslim women are always imagined within the context of some form of violence. Of course, I talk about violence as well, but um, in the kind of mainstream works that I'm talking about, that violence kind is emphasized over the person, and that is where I have a problem with. Like, even if well-meaning, that gaze becomes very denigrating to the representation of Muslim women. So um, hopefully I haven't fallen into that trap, and hopefully I haven't internalized that stereotype, although we all have, I'm sure, at some point or the other. Yeah, and the crux of the story, which is like the menstruation story, you know, offering the namaaz while I was on my periods. I mean, that really happened. And I had that conversation with my father. And I think that was the main conflict from which this entire performance originated. And I think when that happened, uh, uh, my ideals and my belief system came in direct conflict with my religious identity for the first time, an identity that I didn't practice. And I think it was the delicacy of that complication that got me thinking about larger issues. And that's how the script took shape.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, all the metaphors that came alive in the entire performance, now we could see, like the tree that was visible after the removal of the brown tape, or the putting of the brown tape, and just the fact that you find the perfect house, but you cannot have it. Because, and that nanosecond that one takes, and that doubt that they have in their eyes when they're actually, as a Muslim, uttering their name, like the time that that name takes on your lips, that comes out of your throat, stays on your tongue, and comes out of your lips, and the time that it takes, that second when that doubt comes in your heart, that now that you're going to utter your name, you will be labeled. I've also experienced the same thing, and most of us, lots of us have experienced this, that whenever you have an opinion about the state, about the way everything is functioned, actually your citizenship doesn't matter, your role in the democracy doesn't matter. What actually matters is that you're a Muslim. They would say, no, I'm not talking about you, you're a Muslim, you will think like that. Can you come up with someone else who thinks
Yeah, you're reduced to a trope before your arrival as a
like
person. So
everything. So it's as if there's a the announcement of your identity before the announcement of you as a person, and it encompasses and it eats you up, and it stays, and it is used again and again against you. I mean, the only thing probably left is for them to tattoo it on our foreheads. um but I think the metaphors, the whole and the bringing of childhood to adolescence and to the youth, like that whole journey in a single performance has been fitted together so beautifully, if I may say, really beautifully. But the way you've mentioned that how it is so difficult to occupy spaces now for Muslim women, for queer, non-binary, trans Muslims, it becomes a huge burden to fight fights at multiple levels. There's a duality that we are continuously living, that there's the state that we need to fight, there's patriarchy that we need to fight, there is heteronormativity that we need to fight, there are multiple battles that we are fighting, multiple lines that we are negotiating and having a conversation with. So many times we are challenging and subverting things, systems within the community, but at the same time fighting outside. And there are days when we have to prioritize our battles, choose our battles, and there's this, it's as if that there's nothing left other than fighting, that
Yeah.
this, that is what becomes. So how would you talk about the duality that you have presented about fighting outside and subverting within as well, when it comes to the community, our belief systems, both?
Right. So I've grown up in Kolkata, and it's an interesting city because we all look at the culture in Kolkata as one of assimilation. This is where the incumbent party has not been able to establish its foothold yet. Things have changed, obviously, but I think there's relatively more harmony, for the lack of a better word. But as I was growing up, this culture of assimilation was not without its microaggressions, which is something I've addressed in the section where I talk about having to learn Rabindra Sangeet along with peers who belonged from upper caste families. And I just stood out like a sore thumb because, I wasn't expected to be in that space. Um, and similarly, like you said, like we are reduced to tropes before our arrival as people, and so it's very hard to break out of those stereotypes. You have to keep fighting and pushing against those stereotypes in order to present yourself as an individual. And sometimes what happens is you also start performing your own stereotype in order to um, occupy, in order to establish space for yourself, basically. It becomes more of an obligatory compliance to the stereotype that has been imposed on you. And that affects everything, starting from your occupational or residential vulnerabilities, to how you conduct yourself in public spaces, to the kind of friends you make, to in circles of like sexual attraction. Everything, it affects everything. And so it becomes harder and harder as you fight against stereotypes to really understand who you are as a person, because your understanding of yourself as a person is always informed by the stereotypes that you have had to fight against. So that's a big battle for Muslim women. um, and I feel that we have had to fight microaggressions both inside and outside the institution. And that also includes internal battles. Because, like I said, we also tend to internalize stereotypes. And when we do, we also, what ends up happening is we otherize our Muslimness, if that makes sense. We if we believe that we don't, if we believe that we don't embody a particular stereotype, and in order to assimilate in a particular company, we also end up otherizing our Muslim peers. So it's very hard for two Muslim people to also be friends with each other in a workplace, just off the bat, for example. Because we're always trying to merge with the larger company. And that makes it harder and harder for to establish an anchor and take up space, because we're always looking to shrink ourselves. And if we think about, I mean, that becomes the norm, shrinking ourselves, basically. And if you want to fight against that, it would mean establishing ourselves through a loud vocabulary, which is probably not who we are. I know I'm talking very vague terms, but like this is how my thought process worked while I was trying to
Absolutely.
negotiate my own feelings. But I feel like essentially, when it comes to making space for ourselves, it's a constant battle against ourselves and against people around us. And it's made harder by the fact that we also have to live in that culture and sustain ourselves in that culture. So it's a battle against your own sustenance. And you don't know if there's any clear-cut solution to it. I don't think there can be a clear-cut solution to such a problem, because you're trying to fight against a very like an identity that has been labeled marginalized, that has been marginalized, that has been oppressed, and it's an inherited identity. Like
Yeah.
I can't reject my surname. I can't even reject my name. This is an inherited identity, and I have, whether or like, regardless of my faith, regardless of whether I believe in God or I don't, I have to um, fight to take up space with that surname. And that's where my contradiction lay while I was writing the script, that I'm fighting to make space with a surname that I don't even know if I want to fight against. But then I realized, no, I do, because this is my identity. So it's a very like complicated scenario, because you don't practice the faith, but you have to fight for it. I remember as a child, I heard my father say a lot that, don't ever forget that you're a Muslim. And I would take offense to it every time my dad said it. I was quite young, and I didn't know why I was being told that when I was that young and making friends. But now I realize that he saw a lot of events or heard a lot of talk around me that I couldn't quite gauge at that age. And he knew that even, I now realize that even if I forgot that I was Muslim, the world will not let me forget that I'm a Muslim, in all the wrong ways. So I have to always remember what my surname is. And I had a lot of complications and a lot of contradictions regarding this particular fact growing up. But I see what it means now. I understand what that means now. It was a word of caution for me, for all that I'm facing at the moment. And because and I think that's why I titled the script "What's in a Name," because it all started with my name. Like whenever, of course, I've gotten more comfortable introducing myself, but then as a child, whenever I remember my reaction very clearly, I mean, not reaction, I remember how I introduced myself very clearly, which is that every time I pronounced my name, uh, it, I would I would pause, because I knew that it sounded unusual to the person before me, and I would have to make space for that person's reaction to my name, so that the next thing they do is try and pronounce it, and then I can correct them.
Yeah.
So this would be a standard procedure for every time I announced my presence to people. It's not like I mind it, but I also am saddened by the fact that people still have trouble pronouncing Persian names. Um, and
Same.
yeah.
I went to a school for 14 years where everyone mispronounced my name, and I had no control because I was studying in that school since nursery, since lower prep. And so when I went out and moved out and I came to college, I ensured that I was using my name again and again, like emphasizing on it
Yeah.
again and again. And there's so much of space that we have to make, so much of space, enough space so that the right pronunciations fit in, enough space so that our hijabi or non-hijabi head fits in, enough space for our words to fit in, enough space for our love stories to fit in, enough space for our sexuality to fit in, enough space for our citizenship to fit in, enough space for our inheritance to fit in, enough space for our traumas to fit in, enough space for our community, enough space for our friendships, enough space for our solidarity to fit in, enough space in the air so that our sounds of salam alaikum and khuda hafiz could fit in, enough space on the street so that our namazis could fit in, enough, this continuous work and labor that we make, just enough space. And the space we don't just have to make in the state, the modern nation state that is basically built over our bodies, but also within the community. We have to continuously make space of a bold, articulate woman, or an assertive person, or a woman coming from a marginalized caste within the community, so, or someone who comes from a queer community, a queer identity from within the community. So this everyday making space has become like a part of our existence. And as you said, it's not like it has happened overnight. It's not like Muslims have stopped getting houses from 2014 overnight. It's not like we've been subjected to this fight or subjected to this idea that you can be a citizen but only this much. You can be an
Yeah.
employee but only this much.
Yeah.
uh,
Perimeters are set
yeah,
free.
you can be
Exactly.
a Muslim but only the good quote unquote Muslim that we want you to be. Like you can be but only this much, and you need to fit into this mold. And it has been like a navigation that we have to do, and it hasn't happened overnight. As you said, it is something that the generations before us have faced. And right now at this moment, as I say in Urdu, that nafratein to sabke dilon mein thi, but ab now the time is in favor
Yeah.
of that hate. Now power is in favor of that hate. Now media is in favor of that hate. Hence this validation comes up again and again. But what is even more interesting is, in your performance piece, you derive a lot from your parents and what they went through, especially that picture and the story
Yeah.
of the vermilion and your own conversation with your father, and this navigation of having a separate identity outside that of your parents, of your fathers, of your families. So did you show them the movie, and what was that? Did you show them the performance piece, and what was their reaction, and how did they see it, and what did they have to say, if you're comfortable in sharing with everyone?
Yeah, yeah, of course. My parents and I have had a tumultuous relationship with regard to performance. Like I've always been inclined towards performance, but my parents were never happy with it. Although my dad was into jatra, which is a traditional art form in West Bengal. Um, and then in college, okay, it may sound like I'm rambling now, but in college I had joined a theater group which was really toxic. But I did perform a lot with them. And my parents recognized that toxicity from day one, but I didn't listen to them because I was going through this rebel phase where I wanted to break away from the mold of my family entirely and wanted to do something outside the structures that had been the perimeters that had been set for me already. And so I ignored all the signs. I ignored all the red flags and continued working with a very bad company. um, and mainly what happened was that kind of fractured our relationship a little bit. Like I was performing a lot, I was traveling, but my parents had already seen the red flags, so they weren't too happy with it. But then what that those 2 years of working with very toxic company had obviously taken a toll on me, and so it was followed by a long period of healing where my parents, especially my father, helped me a lot emotionally, and he helped me walk through this entire phase, a very difficult phase, if I may add. And our relationship completely changed. um, Previously, I mean, in middle class families especially, it's very difficult to sit and have a conversation with parents about emotions. You just don't have space for that kind of a talk in your house. Um, but after this period of healing, I realized that the space had suddenly opened up, and I could sit and have conversations with my father. I could sit and have conversations with my parents about certain things that I disagreed with them on. And that included my faith, my dietary habits, lifestyle habits, everything that I thought I would never be able to speak to them about. And so when the particular story that I mentioned in the video, the menstruation story, when that happened, when I did offer the namaz with my periods and was feeling a lot of guilt inside, I realized that it came from a different version of me that believed that it was not right to be doing what I was doing. And it was in conflict with a version of me that refused to give in to the belief to the patriarchal edict that, menstruation is a taboo. So there was a conflict, and that conflict resulted in more and more guilt inside me. And I realized that the only way to resolve this is to have a conversation with my father about it. And I did. And of course, he was staunch in his position. He didn't change his opinions. And to my own surprise, I realized that I was okay with it. I simply needed to know that I was, like I said, right in my exercise of choice. Because if I had decided to step back because I was on my periods during the namaaz, then that decision would have haunted me for a long time. So of course, the conflict is not resolved. It was simply a discussion that took place between my dad and I. But what I'm trying to say is, it a lot of the content in this performance stems from these contradictions that arise from how I was raised and how I think now, and they are very different people. And so when I screened this film to my parents 2 days ago, they watched the film and they had reactions. My dad was actually quite proud of having watched the film. I did not probe too much because, of course, I mean, they had just watched the film and I did not want to like fish out reactions. My mother wanted clarification on a lot of parts, but and my dad kind of went into a reverie and he started recounting all these instances from the 80s when he was house hunting in Kolkata, because that was a part that really resonated with him. And then he started recounting all these stories where certain comments were made by friends and acquaintances that were very much directed at his Muslim identity, but were always couched in euphemisms. And he remembered and he started recounting them after watching this video. So again, like his reaction was that, it's a relatable video, and he liked certain parts that certain instances that really spoke to him, like especially the portrait of my parents that I brought into the video, where the colorist had put a sindoor on my mother's head, just assuming she's Hindu, because it was not present in the original, but an assumption was made, and there was no clarification that was asked for. So it was. I mean, my parents obviously laughed it off when that happened, but having seen that in a new light, I mean, not in a new framework of thought through this video, made them laugh in a very different way. So those were interesting reactions to see, because I was obviously drawing from real life experiences that they were aware of already, and they were now watching those instances unfold within a certain framework that I had set. So yeah, I mean, their ultimate reaction was that they were really happy that I had made this work. But I think I can only fish out their reactions in time. Like they're gonna talk more about it now that like after the discussion. I know that for a
We are
fact.
also really happy that you made this work.
Oh, yeah, they
Nazreen.
are.
Yeah, we are also really
Oh, you
happy.
are okay. Okay, I heard they must be. Yeah.
Before we proceed, I just want the attendees or the participants, if you want to ask any question, if you want me to ask any question on your behalf to Nazreen, please put it down in the chat and I will ask her. But yeah, I think the fact that what was in the 80s continues in the 2020s and has intensified even more. And the whole a whole generation of young Muslims have nothing a lot left. Of course, we're building solidarities, we're working really hard, we're trying to grab every happiness that comes our way, but at the same time an entire community has stopped gossiping, an entire community is always on the edge, always terrified, always scared, always searching for their own papers. but by now we all know what is in a name actually, and what is the politics of the names that we carry every day on our iCards, on our lips. How does it matter, and how do they intervene in, in whatever we do, whatever we eat, whoever we love, wherever we study, wherever we work, how that name becomes really important. And there's this very popular शेर which says, नाराज हमसे हैं इतना ये कातिबे आमाल, नाराज हमसे हैं इतना ये कातिबे आमाल, गुनाह कोई करे मेरा नाम लिखते हैं. So the writers of our fate, or whatever we do, are so angry at us for no reason, that someone else commits the sin, but they, without sparing a thought, write our name as the sinners. So that's probably what has become. But I would like to ask you, Nazreen, although the political, the whole burden of the title, what is in a name, is quite clear. I think there's so many people in the comment section who are actually relate to everything. As you said, sadly, unfortunately, heartbreakingly relate to everything that you've said, everything that we've discussed today, and also your performance. So, Nazreen, what is in a name?
Everything. There's just like a one-word answer for this. Everything's in a name. It's like I said, it's something you inherit. It's something you don't have control over, and if you do exercise control over it, it will be in resistance. And so, yeah, a name is something that's attributed to you without your consent, and so it's something that you have to live with. It's something. It's both both an act of violence and not, because it teaches you to fight for space. Do I wish I was born with a different name? No, I don't. It's an unambiguous no, because I like the fact that I'm born with that I've been given the name I have, and that all of my thought processes, what I do, how I choose to live my life, everything has been informed by choices around how I navigate that name. So yeah, I think a name is essentially who you are. And again, like when I was writing the script, I was thinking about how to, talk about my name, and I realized that I don't know how the script is going to take shape ultimately, but all I know is that my name cannot be like in a lot of media, like in a lot of films and theater pieces that I've seen. A lot of Muslim women have very prominent characters. They are prominent protagonists, but their individual assertions get subsumed into larger narratives, and they just relegated to the background. And I didn't want to be an entry point. If I'm taking charge of the script, if I'm putting myself in the foreground, then I am the entry point. So, I mean, that's all that I was thinking about while I was writing the script. And of course, I'm not speaking for all Muslim women out there, obviously, because everybody's experiences are different. That goes without saying. I'm only spoken about things that I have experienced, things that people close to me have experienced, and I've kind of woven a narrative out of it. And clearly it rings a bell with a lot of people out there. And I just wish it didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I absolutely agree that we cannot speak for all Muslim women, but we can definitely say that there are certain commonalities in the experiences that we have, and this is like, you are an entry point to this conversation. Your performance is an entry point to this conversation. And as you said, what is in a name? Everything. Like, we've come to a point where if someone asks me what is the meaning of my name, I would say the meaning of my name is that I will be pulled up at the airport. The meaning of my name is that I have to go back home and ensure that our papers are in place. The meaning of my name is that I will be labeled a terrorist without a second thought. the meaning of my name is it will not matter what kind of meat that I'm carrying, but I'll be lynched first. The meaning of my name is that I would automatically be called an anti-national. The meaning of my name is that I will automatically be subjected to rape threats and death threats. The meaning of my name is Mazlumiyat. The meaning of my name is struggle, and it's no longer what it was meant out to be. So the meaning of my name is also resistance. The meaning of my name is also freedom. Now the meaning of my name will also be the future that we dream together of love and harmony and justice soon. But
And just a
everything
little
is
addendum, how you like last 5 seconds where you just like wonderfully put what the meaning of your name could be, also reminded me that there was a point in my childhood where I used to scribble my name incessantly on a piece of paper because I desperately wanted to fall in love with my own name, because it was being it like there was so much hesitance to pronouncing the name around me that my sense of being was getting diminished. And in order to fight against that, and of course, I mean, I can only put it in words now. I didn't know what this feeling was then, but I remember my reaction was to scribble my name incessantly on a piece of paper, just to almost in an effort to make it permanent and kind of inscribe it in my memory and make sure that I remember what my name is, and just not remember it in the context of anything as such, not in the context of a positive feeling or resistance, etc., but just be aware of what my name was and love it for what it was. I remember getting very excited every time my name appeared on a paper, like as a byline. And it made me really happy to see my own name. And I think it came from that, from a couple of years of constantly scribbling my own name to make sure I didn't hate it because other people reacted poorly to it. Yeah.
may
Because
we
they'll say
indeed-
they love it. They'll say I love your name, but that doesn't mean what you think it means.
Yeah. May you scribble your names all over the universe and every nook and corner. And may every nook and corner fall in love with your name and the beauty, the creativity, the innovation, the resistance, the voice that it carries. May that happen all the time. May the Milky Way reflect your name. Thank you so much, Nazreen, for this conversation. I think that it opened up a lot of our hearts, a whole big box of memories that were there somewhere tucked, and gave us a space to talk about it, to verbalize it. So thank you so much, Nazreen. And I'll just give 5 more seconds to anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question. You can type, and I can ask that to Nazreen.
And before that, I would actually like to acknowledge my entire team. Annette Jacob, who has worked on the videography and editing. She has been so patient with me. Savani Suri, who came and added beautiful sonic textures to the entire video, which I'm very happy about. And Sarba Roy for having assisted with the production in March while we were setting up. So my heart goes out to the entire team for the work they have put in. I'm very thankful. And of course, reFrame, obviously, like this project wouldn't exist without them. Vani has been really amazing. Nimthi, Rithima, everyone has been super supportive. And encouraging. They have given me like invaluable feedback. And yeah, I'm like any other work, I wish a lot of things could have been done differently, but of course, those are lessons learned from my next production, hopefully. Yeah.
Inshallah, absolutely. Thank you, Nazreen. We only have good wishes in the comment section and no questions, because I think everyone is just holding your performance close to their heart, and they will have questions later. And you can follow Nazreen on social media, on Instagram, probably. and she can then answer your questions. So thank you, Nazrin, and thank you, reFrame, for this opportunity, for this space, and for this conversation. Adab.
Thank you, Sabika. Thank you for your enthusiasm. It was wonderful talking to you.
Same, loved every bit of it.
I know, and really, I mean, I don't know how to even thank you guys for this wonderful, sad, beautiful, heart-wrenching, heartwarming uh, piece, or conversation. Actually, this whole evening, as Nazreen said, we've seen her work many, many times, but I again found it moving, to just sit and to watch it, because it takes the little moments. And, we've always maintained that that's been the really, real beautiful thing, that you're able to talk the big things through the little lived moments, And it's also difficult, like both of you said, it's hard to see that it's so relatable. I mean, there are people in the participants who've been writing, saying, who are very different from you in age and experience, but who are also talking about how moving and how relatable it is. I mean, what a sad day, what a sad moment we are living in, that, that things remain relatable and things remain to, still speak to you in so many complex ways. And really, Nazreen, thanks so much for taking those moments. It takes courage, it takes honesty, it takes, to be naked in your emotion and to put it out there through a process that is also not even a live show, but that goes through editing, that goes through filming, and to retain that quality is something that is really precious, I think, in this piece you've created. So, I mean, it's lovely that it defies form. Who the hell cares what it needs to be called? It doesn't need to be called anything. We struggled with it when we were trying to tell people what is the show, but we'll find a language and people will find a way to understand it. So I think that that's really the most beautiful part. And Sabika, as always, you inspire us with the way you're able to knit this together. I love when you said the community doesn't have the space to gossip, to just fight with somebody who's just being an ass openly and just say, you know what, I want to call you out, but to not be able to do that because there is a larger reality that's hemming you in, that stops you, that protects people like that. So, those ways in which your work always carries us. So even within reFrame, the conversations are about how moving and how special this moment is. So I want to send you both a big hug from all of us.
Likewise.
And lots of strength, lots of courage, always being inspiring, always being special. Maybe all do more together and just keep chipping away at these damned forces that will have us in, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
much
so
love, much
much,
friends who attended. Thank you for being here. Nazreen, we'll send you the chat if you don't have it late. We'll send it to you later.
Yes,
so
I was struggling to look at it because I'm on my phone right now.
I should have told you before. It's always nice to read a few good things as you're talking and as you're listening. Thank you all. We will be putting up this conversation in particular online for friends to see with snippets of the show. And, see you here again. And Nazreen, may you have wonderful things happen to you from here on. Never let abusers and naysayers get you down and rob you of what you want to do. Yeah?
Absolutely.
So, and thanks so much for being on this journey with reFrame. I think you've enriched us, challenged us. Every such moment, interaction, I think we come out the richest because we get to engage and get to be with you. So much strength, much love, and big salam and zindabad to all of us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.